She's already told you, just not in words. There is a woman somewhere in your life right now. Someone you see regularly, someone you think about more than you probably admit, and she has been communicating something to you for weeks, maybe longer. Not through text messages, not through anything she has said out loud. Through the quieter language that women actually use when something real is happening inside them. And the reason you haven't been certain about it, the reason you keep going back and forth between maybe she's interested and I'm probably reading too much into this, isn't because the signals aren't there. It's because no one ever taught you the actual vocabulary. Most men were raised to wait for clarity that women almost never give. Women don't announce attraction, they demonstrate it in layers, in patterns, in behaviors that feel ordinary until you understand what they actually mean. And so you've been watching without knowing what you're watching. You've been picking up on something real and then talking yourself out of it because you didn't have the framework to trust what you were sensing. By the end of this video, that changes. You are going to be able to look at the woman who came to mind just now and know, not guess, not hope, but actually know whether what you're feeling is mutual. The problem isn't that she's hiding it. The problem is that nobody ever taught you what not hiding it actually looks like in a woman past her 20s. Here is something worth understanding before we go any further. The confusion you feel around this isn't a character flaw, it isn't a failure of perception. It is the entirely predictable result of growing up in a culture that told men to wait for explicit signals. A verbal yes, an obvious move, an unmistakable declaration, while women were simultaneously shaped to express interest through behavior rather than announcement. Those two patterns were never going to meet cleanly. And so you ended up here, sensing something, unable to confirm it, second-guessing the very instincts that were already picking up on something real. What makes this harder for men in their late 30s, 40s, and beyond is that the women in their lives have also changed. A woman who is 35 or 45 is not broadcasting attraction the way she might have at 22. She is more deliberate, she is more internal, she has learned, sometimes through experience and sometimes through instinct, to hold her interest close until she feels safe enough to let it show, which means the signals are subtler, more layered, more meaningful, but only if you know how to read them. The men who misread this most often make the same mistake in two directions. Some see interest everywhere, in every warm smile, every friendly conversation, and move too fast on signals that weren't actually there. Others see nothing, convince themselves that stillness means disinterest, and walk away from women who were waiting for them to notice. Both errors come from the same root cause. Neither man actually understood the pattern. That is what this video gives you, not a checklist, a pattern. Before we talk about what she does when she's attracted, we need to start where the pattern always starts, not with what she says, not with how she looks at you, but with something far more deliberate and far more telling than either of those things. She doesn't wait for you to come to her, not consciously, but watch where she puts herself again and again, and you'll notice it isn't random. Psychologists who study interpersonal attraction use the term proximity seeking to describe a specific behavioral tendency, the unconscious drive to reduce physical distance between ourselves and someone we find emotionally significant. It sounds clinical. What it looks like in real life is much simpler. She is always nearby, not obviously, not dramatically, but consistently. In a room full of options, she ends up close to where you are. In a group, she angles herself toward you. When seating is open, she chooses the chair that puts her within easy conversation range of you. Not across the room, not the neutral middle, but close. What matters here is not any single instance of this. One time, she might simply be choosing the nearest available seat. But a pattern of positioning, repeated, directional, always toward you, is not coincidence and it is not comfort. It is choice. She is engineering proximity because proximity is the only thing she can give you right now without risk. There is another layer to this that most explanations miss. It isn't just that she appears nearby. It's that she creates reasons to appear nearby. She finds low-stakes excuses to interact, asking about something minor, commenting on something you're doing, appearing at moments when interaction feels natural and unforced. These aren't accidents. Each one is a small, deniable gesture that keeps her in your orbit without requiring her to declare anything. Now, you might be thinking, couldn't she just be a friendly person? Someone who is warm with everyone? And yes, sometimes the answer is yes. But here is the distinguishing detail. A warm person is warm in all directions. An attracted woman is warm in yours specifically. She doesn't engineer proximity with the whole room, she engineers it with you. That directionality is the signal. The most common mistake men make here is noticing the proximity and then discounting it, telling themselves she's just being social. Watch the direction, watch the repetition. The body knows where it wants to be before the mind decides to admit it. Access tells you she wants to be near you, but what she does once she's there, specifically how she uses her attention, that's where the second layer lives. Everyone in the room can hear what you're saying, but she's the one who remembers it next Tuesday and brings it up like it mattered, because to her, it did. Attention is one of the most finite resources a person has. How a woman allocates hers tells you almost everything about where her emotional investment actually sits. When a woman is attracted to someone, her attention doesn't behave the way ordinary social attention does. It becomes specific. It becomes retained. It becomes asymmetric. Here is what that looks like in practice. You mentioned in passing that you've been dealing with something at work. Nothing major, just a comment in the middle of a longer conversation. 3 days later, she asks how it went, not because she wrote it down, because it lodged in her memory the way things lodge when they come from someone who matters to us. She tracks the small things, the incidental details, the offhand comments that you yourself have probably already forgotten. In group settings, watch where her awareness sits. Even when she's talking to someone else, there is a part of her attention that knows where you are in the room. She notices when you laugh. She registers when you go quiet. If something interesting is said, her eyes move to check your reaction, not obviously, not performatively, just a quick calibration. She is measuring the room through you. One of the clearest and most overlooked expressions of this is the phone. In any social moment with genuine attraction, a woman puts her phone away or face down when she is talking with you. This sounds small. It is not small. The phone is where our distracted minds go when the present moment isn't holding us. She holds you above that. Her focus, without performance, is on you. Of course, context matters here. Some people are simply present and attentive by nature. Some environments demand it. But what distinguishes attracted attention from general warmth is the retention. The fact that she is still carrying details of your conversations hours or days later, and that she finds quiet ways to show you that she was listening. What you're seeing in the next signal is the one she can't fully control. And that is precisely what makes it the most reliable. What you've seen so far, the proximity, the focus, those are things she can control. The next signal is the one she can't. She doesn't decide to mirror you. Her nervous system does. And that's exactly why it's the signal most worth watching. What happens in the body when attraction is present is well documented in behavioral research, and it consistently produces a cluster of responses that occur below the level of conscious decision-making. The most significant of these, for the purposes of reading mutual attraction, is behavioral mirroring. When a woman is attracted to someone, she begins to unconsciously adopt their physical posture, their movement patterns, their timing. If you lean forward, she leans forward. If you slow your speech, hers slows too. This is not imitation. It is attunement. The nervous system of an attracted person naturally synchronizes with the person they're drawn to. Beyond mirroring, there are specific micro-behaviors that increase in the presence of someone a woman is attracted to. Voice pitch is one of them. In genuine one-on-one intimacy, a woman's voice often drops slightly, becomes softer, more personal in tone compared to how she speaks in group settings. This isn't a performance. It's a signal her physiology sends before her mind catches up. There is also a cluster of self-directed touch behaviors that researchers have observed consistently in attracted women: light contact with the neck, the collarbone, or a slow turning of a ring on her finger. These don't appear randomly. They appear specifically in his presence, often during moments of heightened conversational intimacy. They are a physical expression of internal awareness. And then there is eye contact. Not the polite kind, the kind that lingers just a beat longer than the social standard, just past the point where comfortable becomes something else. When you catch her eye from across a room and she holds it for 1 second more than she needs to before she looks away, that extra second is not an accident. Here is the important qualifier, because this is where precision matters. None of these signals in isolation tells you anything definitive. Mirroring can be a social habit. A soft voice might be her natural register. One extended glance might simply be curiosity. What you are looking for is the cluster, multiple involuntary signals appearing together consistently in your presence and not uniformly in the presence of others. That consistency, that clustering, is what transforms a behavior from a data point into a pattern. Remember what I told you at the start, that there was a signal most men not only miss, but actively misread. We are getting close to it now. If she suddenly goes a little quiet after a warm moment, don't spiral. That silence might be the most interested she's ever been in you. This is the signal that causes more confusion and more missed opportunities than almost anything else, because it looks, on the surface, like disinterest. A woman who has been warm and attentive, who has been leaning in, making eye contact, remembering everything you've said, suddenly becomes a little quieter, a little slower to reply, a little more reserved than she was yesterday. And most men at exactly this moment conclude that they've done something wrong. They haven't. What is actually happening in many of these cases is something behavioral researchers describe as calibration behavior, a brief period of strategic withdrawal that an attracted woman introduces when she can feel that her interest is becoming visible and she hasn't yet decided how safe it is to let it show. She pulls back slightly, not because the attraction has cooled, but because it has intensified, and she is testing, without fully realizing she's doing it, whether you will lose your footing when she does. The distinction between this kind of withdrawal and genuine disinterest comes down to two things: duration and what follows. Cold disinterest is total. It is consistent. It doesn't alternate with warmth. It is followed by nothing, no re-engagement, no subtle return. Attracted withdrawal is brief. It is followed by a return, often warmer than before. Sometimes with a quiet smile that tells you something resolved itself while you weren't looking. Women in their 30s, 40s, and beyond are more likely to use this behavior than younger women, and not because they are playing games, because they have learned through experience that their emotional safety matters. They have been hurt by moving too quickly. They are watching to see if you are steady. If you panic during the quiet, you have told her something about yourself. If you hold your composure, if you stay warm without chasing, interested without desperate, you have told her something far more important. The common mistake is clear. Men pursue harder in this moment, which reads as anxiety, or they retreat entirely, which reads as disinterest. Neither response is what she's looking for. What she's looking for is steadiness. Hold the ground, let the quiet pass. She'll come back. Everything I've described so far, she may do with more than one person she likes. The final signal is different. It's the one she only does with you. She showed you a version of herself that's a little less polished, a little more real. She probably didn't announce it, but you noticed. And that noticing, that's not nothing. Every woman performs, to varying degrees, a social version of herself. The curated self. The one that knows what to say in groups, that laughs in the right places, that stays composed and pleasant in most situations. It is not fake. It is simply the version of herself that has been trained to function in the presence of people she doesn't yet fully trust. And then there is the other version, the one that comes out in the presence of someone who matters. When a woman is genuinely attracted to someone, not just interested on the surface, but invested in a way she hasn't been able to fully talk herself out of, she begins, gradually and often without realizing it, to let that curated version slip. She admits something small that she wouldn't ordinarily admit. She laughs in a way that is less controlled, more unguarded. She contradicts herself mid-conversation because she is speaking from what she actually thinks rather than what she means to say. She is present with you in a way that she is not quite present in the same room with everyone else. The observable signs of this are subtle but specific. She asks you questions that only matter if she is already imagining some version of a future. What you think about things, what you value, what your life actually looks like beneath the surface. She mentions you to other people without a reason to. She references something you talked about when no one else was there because she was thinking about it afterward and it simply came out. She becomes in your presence a little more honest than she intended to be. This signal is the most reliable of everything I have described today because it is the most costly. Proximity is low risk. Attention can be explained away. Even the involuntary signals can be rationalized. But selective vulnerability, allowing someone to see the version of you that isn't performing, that cannot be done casually. It requires trust. And trust, in the context of attraction, only gets extended when the feeling behind it is real enough to risk something. For women in midlife and beyond, this signal is especially meaningful. Women who have lived enough to know the difference between surface-level interaction and genuine connection do not drop their guard with someone they're simply comfortable with. Comfort doesn't require vulnerability, only something deeper does. The whole pattern, access, attention, involuntary signals, the tension test, and finally this, converges on a single truth. Mutual attraction is not one moment. It is a movement. It is a woman who keeps coming back into your orbit through her own choosing, who remembers what you said when there was no reason to, who cannot quite stop her body from telling you what her words haven't caught up to yet, who pulls back for a moment and then returns warmer than before, and who eventually, quietly, without announcement, lets you see her as she actually is. That is not ambiguity. That is a woman telling you something real. What you do with that knowledge is yours to decide, but you are no longer in the position of guessing. You now have the vocabulary for what you were already sensing, and that changes how you move through every conversation, every room, every quiet moment that previously left you uncertain. You don't need to overanalyze every interaction from this point forward. You don't need to run a checklist in your head every time she laughs. What you need, and what you now have, is the underlying pattern. When you see it building across multiple signals over time, trust what you're reading. It took you this long not because you were oblivious, but because no one ever explained what you were supposed to be looking at. Think about the woman who came to mind while you were watching this. Which of these signals have you already been seeing without realizing what they meant? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone, and the answers there are always more interesting than people expect. If this channel is new to you, what we do here is go deeper than the surface level. Not tips, not tricks. The actual psychology behind how women think, feel, and behave explained clearly for men who want to understand rather than just react. That kind of understanding is worth subscribing for. In the next video, I'm going to show you what most men do the moment they realize attraction is mutual, and why that one move almost always destroys what they've built. You'll want to see that before you do anything.